So another topic that we need to discuss is this whole budget extension. Um, and let's just face it, it is irresponsible for our government representatives to be playing chicken with the budget and threatening to close down the government. We are not a poor country. Now, we do have budget issues. We have spent a lot of money since the pandemic, and we're suffering from it because of inflation, which is we brought on ourselves by putting so much money out into the economy. Our deficit has been ballooning. We are captured by the military-industrial complex, and we're spending lots and lots and lots of money there. And so we do have a budget issue to address, but we've got to do it in a reasonable way. Um, and again, to the theme of this podcast episode, which is really about how are you an adult, and how can you be an adult in the room in a political system that doesn't encourage being an adult? We've got another man child, Matt Gaetz, the far right firebrand, who's wants to go after Kevin McCarthy for making compromises with the Democrats to get this budget resolution passed, or this temporary budget resolution passed, which will be for 45 days to give folks some time to continue working on a permanent budget. He's the leader or a leader within this Freedom Caucus. And this, the Freedom Caucus is really an extension of the Tea Party from that emerged during Obama's first term as a response to his election and the Obamacare legislation. And it's a far right group, right? I mean, we say far right, we say far left. What does that really even mean? But it's farther right than center right, and they are definitely pushing for deep, significant cuts. But how do we get there? How do we get to those cuts? And it has to be a compromise. And early in the podcast, I mentioned a writer by the name of James McGregor Burns, who wrote Leadership and won a Nobel Prize for that book. And he points out in that book that, historically you have the spectrum of a thought on economics between the left and the right. And from using scientific maybe language, you have positive liberty versus negative liberty. And I think the important thing to remember is that both sides, no matter what end of the spectrum, are pursuing their own vision of liberty, their own vision of what it means to be free. Now, on the right end of the spectrum, it means less taxation, less government interference, let people pull themselves up by their bootstraps, let people control their own wealth and distribute it however they want. Tends to be a little bit more libertarian even in that respect. Small government, you're just here to help us provide services, basic services, and over my lifetime, the dialogue is that they don't want this bloated bureaucracies that tend to form within our federal and state governments. And of course, you have the issue of the deep state or the lifelong bureaucrats that are actually running things. And there's truth to that, right? There are lifelong bureaucrats who are in their positions forever and ever who are running things. Are they nefarious? No, they're probably not nefarious. They're day-to-day workers who come in and do the toil of keeping the bureaucracy running, and don't have a whole lot of power. But they're necessary to keep the government functioning. So you have that perspective on the negative liberty, and negative not being bad, but less. Negative meaning less. Less interference equals to more liberty, or less intervention from the government leads to more liberty. On the opposite side, you have the left. On the opposite side, you have the left. And the left is going to argue that not everyone's born with equal opportunity, and therefore we need to take wealth and redistribute it. And so we call this positive liberty. In order for people to be able to achieve freedom and liberty, we need to redistribute wealth through taxation, through government programs, through things like food stamps and housing programs and what have you. And that tends to be the perspective of the left. And so that is the classic debate. And that's what we're facing within this conversation around the budget. You've got those on the far right who want to cut, and there is a need to cut, right? And you've got those on the left who don't want to see those cuts. Actually, some would probably prefer increasing spending. There's some debate on the military-industrial complex as well, right? In the past, the left has been more open to cutting it, but right now we're deep into this Ukraine thing, and there's other threats, so there might not be an appetite to cut defense right now. So where are those cuts going to come from? That's what we've got to figure out. But getting back to the theme of this podcast, how could you be an adult in the room? Well, being an adult is compromising, figuring out ways to compromise to move things forward. We don't live in a world of absolutes where we always get what we want. Change is also incremental. The budget cuts that probably need to take place, or budget reallocations that need to take place, are probably going to be incremental or need to be incremental. You can't just slash and dash, the budget in major and significant ways and not expect bad consequences. So we need to be thoughtful about this, and we need to be able to compromise. So Kevin McCarthy was an adult. He was the adult in the room during this compromise, and he's going to play the political consequences for that, which he knew, which is another adult thing to do. That there's going to be political consequences, even though you're making the right decision and taking the right actions to keep the government running and operational, and to prevent people from experiencing harm because of a shutdown. So Kevin McCarthy did the right thing. Matt Gaetz is going to go after him and try to take his position away as the Speaker of the House, but hopefully that won't happen, and people will rally around Kevin to reward him for being an example of what an adult in the room looks like in Washington, D.C.